Hello, seminar. I am Lindsey Highveld, your co-host for Shakespeare's Other Disability Plays, Part 2. We're here just to talk with you a little bit about the excellent blog posts that you did as you start thinking about your next blog post and eventually your seminar project. We really enjoyed getting to read over what you're coming up with, and we saw a number of different places where papers were coming together over shared topics or shared questions in ways that we wanted to draw attention to. We thought that thinking about connections between your papers might prompt you in the work of thinking through your project. And it might help to, if you want to go as far as to like have conversations with those people, that's great. But even if all that this does is help you realize points of connection, we think that this is a really sort of critical time as you're thinking through things, and it helps to think with others. So we wanted to point out some people who are maybe thinking alongside you. In picking up these threads, maybe see how they continue to develop over the course of the seminar work.
And Lindsey and I did not come up with these categories or groupings together. We actually came to it separately and then chatted for a few minutes before we pressed record. So one of the really great things about this seminar and the work that we do is you can come to disability in so many different ways. And so it was instructive for us that we each came up with different categories. So Lindsey's going to talk about her categories first, and we'll move into the ones that sort of bleed into mine, and then I'll finish up with the ones that were outliers from hers.
There was one category that we both shared that independently we came up with together, and that was a focus on youth and youthfulness in terms of ability, able-bodiedness, and disability. Both Eileen and Emily are thinking about youthfulness. And that strikes me as a really critical area of concern, thinking about disability and the life cycle generally, but especially as we try to conceptualize what is able-bodiedness, what is normalcy, how is that constructed during the early modern era, that youthfulness is a really critical part of that, especially as it connects to gender. So Eileen and Emily, that's one of those areas that we saw coming together. Another one that of the categories that I came up with that I saw people speaking sort of in the same direction is the question of disability and empire. Thinking about the role of disability in nation building and national identity is something that Ari and Penny and Kelsey are all doing in different ways on different texts, but together thinking about what is the interplay between disability and empire. And that struck us as also like a really rich, vital area to sort of head in. This was not so much a topic as it was a shared question. And I know that this is one that we all think about in different ways, but I saw several people speaking about how do we conceptualize disability broadly without opening it up too far. I think that's such a great question. I saw Cameron and Simone specifically like trying to wrestle with what it means to so broad that it means nothing. So Cameron and Simone. The final category that was one that I identified was several of you interested in issues of masking or passing, and especially, or I should say, and or masking and passing and or resistance, right? Not thinking of masking or passing as a negative necessarily, but as a strategy inherent to disability, but especially inherent to disability resistance. And I saw Simone, Melissa, Royce, Penny, and Nick all speaking about versions of that question of passing and resistance.
So this is where Lindsey's categories and mine start to overlap a little bit, because I included masking and passing under the broader category of performance. And so I had also Simone, Penny, Nick, Melissa, and Royce, but added to that category Cameron and Emily, because they are talking about like performances, right? I thought about the performance of sprezzatura. Simone talks about that, and the performance of masking, as along the same lines as Nick's insistence on thinking about play, and a play, right, as a tactic. And so that was a grouping that I wanted to maybe think about expanding into the umbrella of performance. Related to that in a way is thinking about prosthetics. Lots of those same people who are thinking about performance are also thinking about prosthetics, but to those categories we can think about adding the lyric prosthetic that Eileen brings up and talking about the sonnets. Cameron, it speaks specifically in terms of prosthesis, as well as does Simone with sprezzatura. And prosthetics then bleed into my next category. I'm not great at keeping things super separate, which is thinking about like form and epistemologies, or ways of thinking as and thinking and making meaning as disabled, as a disabled community or as disabled people, which would bring possibly Simone's work. Definitely, I think Eileen's and Emily's, which are dealing with form, and also into conversation with Penny's, with Kelsey's, and with Nick's, because Kelsey is thinking about the form that characters take in new iterations of story, which I think is an interesting way of maybe thinking about the boy players and how things change as they grow, and develop. And that can take us right back to youthfulness where we began. So these are just, again, sort of big tents where you can choose to hang out and discuss things, or not, right? They're just sort of where we see your ideas constellating.
Another thing, and I mentioned this, I think, in both of the Zooms, but I want to say again, I was so grateful for how many of you were explicit in your first post that your ideas are still in process, right? I think it's very easy to say that apologetically. I don't want you to have to apologize about it. I think that's a strength, not a weakness, and a gift you give to others. And so I also think that such great thinking, and especially thinking together, happens when we are willing to like try things out and be provisional and say like, I don't know where this is going to go, or like, I don't even know if I believe this all the way yet, but here we go. And so many of you did that already really beautifully. And I would just encourage you to keep with that. Give yourself the freedom to just experiment a little bit, knowing that the stakes are very low, and we are, but the opportunities are great. So keep that up, as well as all the other good work that you've been doing. We just wanted to end by reminding you what's coming up next. You are going to submit a second blog post by February 5th, which is very soon. Again, we would like to remind you that these can be loose. Provisional, yes. They don't need to look like an essay. They don't need to look like polished, finished writing. We know that this is in process. So keep that in mind. And then February 14th, Valentine's Day, is the deadline for the final submission. A word about that, though. By final submission, we actually mean that's the deadline by which we have to tell the SAA that everyone is participating and has done the work. It does not mean the day you actually have to have a final version of your seminar paper that can never be revised again sent to all of us. You need to send something so that we know that you are, committed to the process. And we also recognize that for some of you, you might want a hard and fast deadline that you then never have to cross again, right? You can send it in and just be done thinking about it until we make you think about it more closer to the conference. Mm-hmm. But don't feel like there isn't continued room for development in the months between February 15th and when we convene otherwise. So we do need to have something from you by then, but it too can be provisional. It's the word of the day.
Yes. Yes. We are brought to you by the letter C and the word provisional. I want to say too that you can ask us for help if you need us to have a quick glance at something, if you need to talk through a problem or an idea or whatever. Let us know. That's our job. We would love to facilitate you and your ideas and your conversations, and make things easier if we can. So be in touch with us if we can do something for you as seminar leaders. If all we can do is be like, yep, I get it. We can do that. We can do that too.
We really can't do that. Mm-hmm. I would also remind you that you are a wonderful resource to one another. So especially if someone is, working on something connected to what you're doing and you'd love to know what resources they have, ask them. Or if you want to run an idea past one another, we're happy to do it for you. But we also know that part of what this seminar does is puts you in community with a larger group of people, not just us. So take advantage of that too. Otherwise, we will look forward to seeing your second blog post in a couple of weeks. In a week. And thank you again for all that you're doing. It's really a joy to get to do this with you.
Bye, everybody.